Now, this is going to be kind of an interesting look because I always sound on the gold diggers, the I hate the moochers, and it is. It's a royal pain in the ass. When you go to Thailand, the Philippines, anywhere in Southeast Asia, and you go through the work, you go through the dating sites or whatever it is, you meet with ladies, and you think you finally found just a wonderful woman. You really care about her. You're not going to marry her. You're not falling in love yet. But you can see she's the kind of woman that you would fall in love with. And then all of a sudden it starts. I need money for food. I need money for this. I need money for that. And it's really easy to build up animosity towards these ladies because we don't live in their world. And a lot of these ladies, that's why I put it, are they really being gold diggers, or are they simply, really terrible at managing money? There's this one young lady, and is this kind of brought up the subject because there's one lady I met in, on one of my trips to Thailand, hit it off wonderfully. I mean, I was with her for the majority of the month I was there. We kept the relationship going when I came back to California, waiting for my next trip to Thailand. And the one thing that I did notice is she had the sweetest heart. She would well, a good example is when we parted the first time. I was in Bangkok and I was going to Pattaya. I had some business to take care of in Pattaya, and there would be nothing for her to do. So I told her, I said, go home, check on your kids, and then, uh, when I'm ready in a few days, I'll have you come down to Pattaya with me. So I, she went home. Her daughter picked her up because she was already in Bangkok. No big deal. When she came down to Pattaya, uh, I had paid for the taxi, so she didn't have to worry about that. And then going back, because I was going to leave, I needed a few days to finish up in Pattaya. Then I was coming back to Bangkok to get ready for my departure home, less than a week. And so when I was in Pattaya, I gave her money, and because we were doing some things, and she was going to get a taxi. She had to pay for the taxi plus travel and everything. So I gave her, a couple $1,000. And I had to leave. So she was going to leave later in the day, but her daughter was there. So they're going to go to the beach and, just have some fun before they took off to go back home. She lived north of Bangkok. And in the afternoon, she calls me and she's like, I see you. I said, I thought you were leaving. She said, well, we are. So we're getting ready to leave, but I have to see you before I go. And so I said, okay. So I was kind of happy to see her anyways. So I see her and her daughter, and she just has this very big smile on her face, looks so proud, and she hands me this bag. And it's full of polo shirts. And, just, they were nice. And I mean, it wasn't, they were knockoffs, but still, it was very sweet of her. She went shopping for me, and she was so proud because she bought me these things, and she looked at me as her man, and it was a sweet moment. Okay. But then, like all sweet moments in Thailand, they're cut short because then she explained to me that I need to give her more money to get home. I said, I just gave you, I think it was 3,000 baht or whatever, and the taxi ride is only going to be like 1,500, and the rest would be for eating or whatever. And she said, I know, but I spent on the shirts. And that kind of summed up the way a lot of Thai ladies are. It's just so they completely are terrible at managing your money. There's no saving for a rainy day. It's if you got it, spend it. And it leads to sometimes, and what's really hard, it makes it really hard for the Western man because where if the girls just, because you see some of these stories about these women that are just ruthless and they're scamming the guy for every dime they can get out of him, and the money goes to support their boyfriend they're living with, and I mean they're just evil in their what they're getting this money for. But when you see somebody that does things for out of the goodness of their heart, it just leads to trouble because no one's ever taught them how to manage money. No one's ever taught them to save for a rainy day. It's if you got it, spend it, and with that, it's hard to be furious at someone when, you've given them money for something they need and they go back to see their mother and father and the water's pouring through their kitchen, the ceiling. And it's like, what do you do? Here in the West, we have credit cards, and if your girlfriend or if the woman that you love went to see your parents and the water was pouring into their the kitchen, she has a credit card that she would put it on, and then you have 30 days to figure out how you're going to pay for it. But there they don't have that option. And it's not like they're taking the money and using it for selfish means. In most cases, if you're dating a Thai woman and you ask her, it's like, okay, where do you want to go to eat tonight? Most of the time, they will say a Thai restaurant that's very cheap, no big deal. But it's so funny when they're paying for something. Let's say they take their kids out to dinner or they're taking you out to dinner. They will pick the most overpriced, Western seafood kind of place that there is, and they have such limited means. And it's like, with such a limited amount of money that you have, why would you pick one of the most expensive places to go to? And same way, this young lady, her boss had wanted her to travel to a city that was, several hours away from her house, and so he gave her a certain amount of money. And I mean, he was very generous. He wanted her to spend the weekend because there was a job there for her to do. And she could have. Now, if it had been me, I have the money, but I would have thought, okay, he gave me this money. I can go and I can go on the cheap, and I'll have some money left, when I come back out of these travel expenses. Not her. No. First thing she does is she tells her whole family, her kids, oh, we're going to Pattaya. And, so they start thinking about the beach and everything else. Then she goes to a hotel. Instead of getting, looking for a really cheap hotel that, like I would stay in, $20 a night, something like that, she finds a hotel that's nicer and, a little fancier, but, still way more than she needs to spend. And then instead of looking at it as like, okay, I have my, 3 children, my grandchild, my 2 children with me, we'll just stay in one room and stay together. She gets her own room. And in a matter of no time, she's doesn't have money and she's going to send her money. And it's like, I don't want to hear this. It's like, where'd all your money go? You had plenty of money to spend 2 days in Pattaya and get back home. It's like, where'd it all go? And, every time I see this woman, she has a brand new, bathing suit or a brand new underwear, and they're the fancy kind that match and very sexy looking. And it's like, I've never seen somebody, be limited on money so much, but always have such fancy chonies. And it's just hilarious. But it's hard because when I look at her, I see the sadness in her eyes sometimes when just poverty. It's, I've never been in that situation, but I can imagine that when you're faced with poverty all the time and you get just a glimpse of, living large or, going to a nice place or getting some things or buying some things for your kids or whatever, I can imagine it would feel great. It would feel like you're like the rest of the world, for a short period of time. So it's very hard to kind of weed out and see why, if a woman needs money from you, why she needs it. Is it because she has a kind heart and overextends herself? Or is it that she's you know, buying a motorcycle for her live-in boyfriend that you don't know about. So it's difficult, and you have to, it makes it harder for us because, quite frankly, whatever she's borrowing money for, it pisses you off because you're the guy that's having to supply the money. And you're the guy that feels like he's being taken advantage of. And then when you see she's doing it to, do something nice for someone she loves, or just take care of something that's needed for someone she loves, it makes it hard to get mad at them. And it's harder for you. Because one thing, if they're gold diggers and they're just, raking you over the coals to give their boyfriend, a new motorcycle, you can get pissed about that. You can yell and scream and really, get all of your frustrations out. But when, she's buying her son a pair of sneakers because his are literally falling apart and he's got to go to school, how do you look at that and start screaming at her? I can't believe you spent the money I gave you. But it's one of the situations, if you are looking to date in Thailand, one of the situations you might have to deal with. Now, I'm not saying everyone is like this. Some ladies have good jobs. They have a situation to where, they have a pension from their husband. They have a good job. They're doing okay. They don't need another man to give them money for anything, and that's ideal because it makes it to where your money goes further in her necessities of life. You're not having to support her children. You're not having to support her mother and father. It takes a lot, and a lot of men, when they enter into these relationships with women, you have to consider that because there's nothing worse than falling in love with somebody and just having all these feelings with them and realizing you just can't afford it because it requires too much money to support all these people, to support her and all of her bills that she has and loans that she's taken out, and support her children, and support her parents, and then whoever else comes along, the uncle that hasn't had a job in 35 years, whatever. It gets costly. So you have to consider that and always, move slowly to where you see. Always question when somebody asks for money out of you, before you give it, find out. Are you the only person giving money? There was a story I heard, and I met the guy. He had a girlfriend who's a Filipino, and she was, the kind that would just. She wanted to extract as much money as she could out of him. He was the dumb foreigner, the ATM, and all the other things that you've heard. And she would always want to go to her family didn't live far from the city, but they still lived in a rural area in one of the villages or whatever. And she always wanted to go there. And every time he went there, he had to pay his respect to the elders. And everyone did it, I guess. It was a thing to where they would go up to the elder and, bow and give them acknowledgement for being an elder. But she told him you have to give money to the elders. So he said, well, how much? $20, $50, whatever, US. And so he did, $20 bill, he bowed, gave it to the elder. And then after about the third, fourth time, he realized that while everybody, paid respects to the elders, he was the only one having to give money. And it's like, yeah, that's kind of wrong. And you don't just give out money because you might be able to afford it a little more than your future brother-in-law or something. It's stupid. So anyways, you have to be on top of these things. But at the same time, you also have to have a heart. If your girl, spends money on you, and it's not much, but she's taking money that you plan for a taxi ride or something, and she bought you something, how can you get, crazy mad at that? How can you, I'm going to break up with you because you took, 1,500 baht that I gave you for a taxi ride, and you bought me something nice with it? It's like, that's kind of, it's a hard thing to do. And it is something that you have to come to terms with because it's things that happen in Thailand. So, welcome to Thailand, as they say. Well, if you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. There's almost 100 videos with the shorts and the full-length videos on my channel now. There's a lot to see. Everything from traveling to love to lust, the red light districts, everything you can imagine. So, please subscribe. It helps the channel grow. And if there's any questions, my email is the front and at the end of the video. You can email me anytime if you have any questions. So good luck, and I wish you well.